Hey guys, in this video I'm gonna show you how to install steel brake lines for MT-07 with ABS. And for my bike, I'll only be doing the front lines. As a lot of you know, the rear brakes on the MT-07 is shit, and I just don't think it's worth spending money on shit to make it less shitty. It's a really weak rear brake for the MT-07, and I don't use my rear brake basically ever, other than in maybe extremely slow traffic. So I felt like it wasn't worth the time, effort, or money to fix it. So why steel lines? Well, if you look at the service manual for any of these bikes, you'll see that they recommend to replace the brake lines every 4 years because the stock ones are rubber. If you buy the bike brand new, I would say the difference between steel lines and regular rubber lines is pretty much non-noticeable. But over time, as the rubber wears down, the hoses basically stretch quite a bit. So when you put a lot of brake pressure on your lever, some of the pressure goes into stretching the hose instead of into your pistons. And so as a result, you lose a little bit of brake feel. So for a replacement item, it's worth it to spend the money to get steel lines. And steel lines are basically a lifetime part. So you're basically replacing a maintenance item, putting in something that will last the bike's lifetime, and it will also give you improved brake feel. So it's a win-win in my eyes. Before you start, I highly recommend to remove your pads because brake jobs are always going to be messy, and you do not want fluid going on this pad. So it takes like 5 minutes. It is 100% worth it to remove the pads. You can get brake fluid and other stuff and be able to clean them up. Getting them on pads and cleaning them up is a lot of work, and even then still a lot of people recommend to remove the pads altogether. So highly recommend take off the pads before you start replacing the lines because you will get fluid somewhere. To get started with the brake line, you gotta take off a couple panels. You gotta take off the two side panels, and you gotta take off the tank cover. Once you do that, the main reason is to reach these two joints, and if you do the rear steel brakes, you gotta reach these two. You gotta lift the tank up and move it out of the way. If you move it a little bit, you usually get enough clearance to be able to open these two bolts over here. The other bolt you gotta take off is this one. This just attaches the brake line to the headlight assembly. And after that, all you gotta do is bleed your brakes completely dry, just so you don't make a mess when you open the lines. So the rest of the job will be nighttime footage. My dumbass decided to do this job in the middle of the wettest summer in the Northeast. And I basically only had that night to work on the bike, and it was gonna start raining from the next day onwards for the rest of the week. So I had to get the job done before my next track day. So I tried to crank up the exposure, but sorry guys, you got to deal with the night footage for replacing the actual lines. So I'm gonna start from the master cylinder and work my way down. This way, gravity is gonna be my friend. If there's any droplets of brake fluid left that wasn't drained from the initial drain, this will take care of it and make sure I don't spill too much. And for these brake bolts, it doesn't need to be said guys, but use a torque wrench. Don't use an impact driver. These are really sensitive bolts and you don't want to strip them. I'm basically following the OEM lines and working my way down. And in both ends of all the lines, you gotta remember to replace the old crush washers with the fresh ones that you're provided. So after the master cylinder, I'm gonna go down to the ABS line and detach the line from the ABS pump. And trying to make sure that I minimize the brake fluid spills to as little as possible. Some of the brake lines won't go directly into the fitting because they come in at a bend, and so to bend them in place, you gotta use a ballpoint pen, put it through the hoop, and put some gentle pressure until you can bend the hook part of the line in place. Alright guys, so this is how the line snakes through here. So when you put on the second line, you gotta take up a couple of the clamps that are clipping it on. There's one over here, there's one over here, and there's one over here. Once you take these off, the line should just come off, and you can basically follow the old line and get it all the way over here. So after the ABS pump, I'm gonna work my way down to the calipers. I start with the left caliper because that's where the line from the ABS meets with the U line for the right caliper. This is probably the trickiest one to get right, just because there's two hoops that are going, and you got to work with 3 crush washers and 1 banjo. And finally, the right caliper is the last line that I gotta replace. And all of these lines, I basically just hand tighten really gently. Before torquing them down, I'm gonna make sure that all the lines are going through the sleeves and the brackets properly. This way, when I torque them down, they don't have any stress on them. So after putting in the new lines, the only thing that remained was filling the new lines with brake fluid. I did this the next day when I had a little bit of clear skies to fill in the fluid. This will take quite a bit of time, mostly because the lines are all air. So it might feel like you're pumping the brakes forever to get the new fluid in, but eventually you'll make progress and you'll see fluid on the other end of the drain caliper. One thing that really helps a lot with this and braking and bleeding brakes in general is either having a vacuum pump or having speed bleeders. And for my case, I use speed bleeders. So they're basically one-way drain valves that you fit in place of your OEM drain bolts. And what they do is they prevent you from having to loosen and tighten the bolts every time you're trying to get brake fluid out. It's a lifesaver for me because it makes brake jobs go from like half an hour and often a 2-person job to like a 5-minute 1-person job. But yeah, that's it for the video, and that's how you replace brake lines on the MT-07. Thanks for watching, guys.